Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Pure Living Family podcast. I am excited for today's topic, and we have our new friend Greg, the Hydrogen Man. And you'll get to hear a little bit more from him in just a second. But, Greg, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invite.
So, a little bit of background. Pure Living Family has just built out a new partnership with Holy Hydrogen, holyhydrogen.com. You can find them on all social platforms. But to introduce this topic, I want to read the letter of the founder's story that you can find on their website, Mr. Takashi Hida, who created this hydrogen technology. And so let me just read that, and then maybe Greg, you can chime in of how you got involved in the organization and a part of the company. So this is what Mr. Takashi has to say. The development of the Lorgie's Hydrofix was inspired by my daughter's birth with a rare and serious genetic condition. Faced with a challenging prognosis, our family sought ways to provide comfort and support. When Takashi learned of his daughter's diagnosis, he began searching for meaning and for ways to bring hope to his family and to others facing serious challenges. Out of that experience came the desire to create the Lorgie's Hydrofix, a device designed to produce high purity hydrogen water and hydrogen gas. And you see Greg wearing that to breathe in the gas for people who want to add hydrogen to their daily wellness routines. The Lorgie's Hydrofix is not a medical device and is not intended to treat any disease. Its creation is, however, deeply connected to one family's story and their wish to turn a difficult experience into a mission of service. Perhaps my daughter's life can bring hope and encouragement to all those who face their own unique struggles. Hence, my daughter's life and the birth of the Lorgie's Hydrofix are inextricably entwined, a testament to an achievement of her life. My sincerest hope is that the Lorgie's Hydrofix will become a source of comfort and support in daily life for people around the world. Mr. Takashi, is it Hida? Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Greg, I know you wanted to go ahead and introduce yourself and maybe give a couple disclaimers, but I would love to hear your reaction to that letter from Mr. Takashi and kind of tell us how you discovered this technology.
Yeah. My only disclaimer is I don't give any medical advice. I make no medical claims, and I don't make any claims for or against any products. But, Mr. Hida's, it's a very sad story, really. I didn't even know about the story and his daughter when I first went down this journey, obviously, because all that happened with me is that I got really sick. And it's a little ironic that I worked in the medical field for over 20 years. And seeing what happens behind the curtain literally made me very disappointed. I saw the limitations of the medical establishment and I hoped that I would never get sick. And sadly, that's exactly what ended up happening. And I had severe medical problems. They were so severe that, one, I'm not even supposed to be alive right now. I'm already a medical miracle. Much like Hida's daughter. She was only supposed to live till like roughly the age of 3 to 5. And she's going to be like 18 years old. She's a freaking miracle. When I say she's a miracle, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe from my understanding is that she's the only person in the world with the severity of her genetic disorder that has lived this long. And of course, her father attributes it to the machine that he designed for her. The one thing that I learned about, because I was reading all the data on hydrogen. I'm highly disappointed in what's happening in the whole industry, which has really just showed me the level of corruption in the world in general, and it's just horrible. And then this little device is like a little needle in a haystack, in my opinion, when it comes to health. It is absolutely next level. It's what not only transformed my life. If anybody wants to see like real people's lives that have been transformed, not just people saying, oh yeah, I feel better, like actual medical issues that were diagnosed and somehow mysteriously those issues are gone now. Some of them even, like there's a guy, and I interviewed some of these people on my channel. Everything's free. Everybody can go to my channel and watch it for free. Like for example, on YouTube, the channel's called Uprising 144K. Like I interviewed one guy who had cancer and his cancer's all gone. And his doctor's like, geez, this is a medical miracle. We didn't even do any treatment on you. and they want to put them on a list of medical miracles, but it wasn't just a miracle. I mean, there were certain specific things that were done in order for his cancer to just magically disappear. And that's not the only testimonial. I have so many. I've been doing this for over a decade, and it's been absolutely my passion because it's not, in my opinion, just something that we just figured out and came up with. In my opinion, this is something that's God given, literally in nature. I mean, the device, the Holy Hydrogen device, is literally named after a place called Lourdes, France, or Lourdes, France, which is basically a place where people had all these miraculous healings from drinking the water and all this stuff over there. And ultimately, it was the Japanese. Nobody else could figure it out. Everybody thought it was just water, but the Japanese found that that water appears to have high levels of molecular hydrogen in it. That's how all this research started, and they started seeing what it was doing to mice. It was unbelievable, and now it's being used in almost roughly 30 university hospitals in Japan medically. It's phenomenal. I had a lot of medical issues, but the one that was supposedly going to take me out, or the one that was already supposed to have killed me, was a major heart condition that I had. And I was shocked when this little device, all of a sudden my heart condition just disappeared. A condition that I had had for a very long time, by the way. And the cardiologist couldn't believe it. Now, doing it once, that's one thing. But now I've had multiple people with heart conditions that had just disappeared. I have a testimonial on my channel of a woman who's almost 100 years old, had 3 different heart conditions, and she was on pharmaceuticals for over 30 years, specifically to try to control her blood pressure. They told her that she couldn't get surgery for her heart conditions because she's almost 100 years old. And they said it would just kill her. She couldn't survive the surgery. And now her daughter ended up finding me. She did my protocol and used this special device. I showed the email from her doctor on the testimonial video. All her heart conditions just magically disappeared. Crazy, crazy, documented by the doctor. And then things got even crazier. They had to take her off the pharmaceuticals. They couldn't believe that her body started working properly at almost 100 years old, and they had to remove her off the pharmaceuticals that she had been on so long. And the doctors were worried. They were like, we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we don't really want to take you off this stuff, but we have to, because your body, once your body's working right, if you stay on these pharmaceuticals, that can be detrimental. They had to take her off. And that's just one of so many stories. I mean, the things I've seen from, just to name off a few things that I personally have seen, from arthritis, diabetes, glaucoma, macular degeneration, numerous eye conditions, which is really kind of odd, dementia, Alzheimer's, autoimmune issues, which is one of the other issues that I had. I've seen people with, there are certain lung issues, a lot of gut issues. That's another big one, like Crohn's disease, celiac disease, IBS, leaky gut. It just goes on and on. It's not even just for people who are sick. The Japanese have done extensive research on what it does for athletics. It's one of the things that I really want to see going into the future. I want people to find out about this because athletes who get hit in the head a lot, football players, boxers, MMA fighters, there has to be life after sports for them. And a lot of them end up having, concussions, TBI. I worked with a woman who had TBI. The results were phenomenal when no doctor could help her. Strokes and heart attacks. I mean, there's so much. This magical little gas, which is all it is. It's a special type of gas. Oxygen's a gas. Molecular hydrogen is a gas. And we are specifically talking about that type of hydrogen because there's other types. And it's just been such a phenomenal journey. And I've been very passionate about it because when you suffer from medical issues like I did, it just ruins your life. I did lose everything. I lost my home. I lost my job. I lost everything when I was sick because I couldn't work. There was huge periods where I couldn't even stand up. I was in so much pain. And yeah, it just ruined my life. And I made a vow and a promise that if I ever found my way out of that hell that I was in, that I would share with people. And that's why I started my YouTube channel and everything that I've been doing. And I let nothing sway me in regards to corruption, because I get approached every single day by companies who want me to promote products like these silly little things, these bottles, and they always want to promote a supplement and they want to do all this. There you go. See, yeah, that's the same exact one too, by the way, because they're basically made by the same companies. They just put different, what do they call them? White label or black label? I don't know what it's called.
White label, yeah. Well, let's pause there for a second. So you found hydrogen through your own research. What was it what was the aha moment that this looks interesting to me, that if I try molecular hydrogen, it might help me?
Well, first, so one of the things that I decided to do when I was sick, I got tired of hearing a lot of podcasts because I was trying to listen about health, but they were all contradicting each other. You got one guy telling you eat nothing but meat. You got another guy saying you should eat nothing but fruit. You got a guy telling you to drink alkaline water. You got a guy telling you to drink distilled water. And there's no consensus. And it's very frustrating because I went down all these paths, trying all these diets, carnivore diet, keto diet, vegan diet. Like it became very frustrating, and getting no results was my biggest frustration. And so I finally decided to just look at scientific data, scientific evidence, stop listening to everybody else and just go with the best data that I could find. And I was looking at ancient scriptures for ancient wisdom about health. I was looking at scientific evidence and looking at where this data was coming from, who was funding it, everything that I could possibly find in regards to that. And I was also doing a lot of critical thinking on my own. And, I have an education background too. So I was basically self-educated and going everywhere I could. And everything kept leading down to the same place, and that was Japan. All the best stuff I was finding was coming out of Japan. A lot of people don't know that the Japanese are kind of obsessed with health. There's a reason that they have the highest life expectancy, or the longest life expectancy of any industrialized nation in the world. And when you spend time there, and I have lived there throughout my life, you can see it and how interested they are, even especially in water. The science they have about water and hydrogen is there is nobody higher than them in the world that understands these subjects best. And that's why they have them in their certain university hospitals, and they understand hydrogen. When I first stumbled upon the scientific evidence about what hydrogen appears to be doing for our health, I was actually skeptical. I thought it was a scam at first, and I literally read the data for almost 4 years before I even contemplated trying it. And once I saw the data for so many years, I was like, this sounds incredible, but where in the world do I get molecular hydrogen? I can't go to the corner drugstore and buy hydrogen, let alone knowing how to use it. I didn't know how to use it in order to get maximum benefit, let alone I never even thought that it might be dangerous on how you make it. And so I literally became a hydrogen production specialist. I learned every modality of making hydrogen, all the dangers or potential good parts about each method, because I wanted the best. And that's where my mind really shifted, because everybody's focused on what hydrogen can do for you. And then they'll be like, oh, hydrogen can do this, this, this. And at the very end, they say, here, you can buy a tablet that makes some hydrogen, right? But what people don't seem to understand, and I took a very different approach, which was, it became very clear that hydrogen is amazing for our health. There's no question about that anymore for me. That's clear as day. Just like we know oxygen has certain benefits, that's clear as day. I don't need to go down that rabbit hole anymore. What I realized was I need to find the best way to make it so that it's the most effective, so that it's the safest, and then I have to find the best way to actually use it and implement it in my life. And that's when I started looking and didn't realize that there's many different ways to make it. And these are just a few examples. Like, these are not making hydrogen the same way. The tablets or whatever, or magnesium rods, are a chemical reaction. That's how it makes hydrogen. Am I a fan? Absolutely not. I won't even use this stuff. You can do a simple lab test on these, and you'll see what's in them. Specifically look for heavy metals. I'm not a fan for many reasons. And it makes the water super acidic, which is kind of hilarious, because we were told that alkaline water is the best. Now we're being told acid water is the best. It's silly, because pure hydrogen actually is pH neutral, by the way. And then you have the little bottles. These do it differently. These are doing direct electrolysis, which has a whole other set of negative connotations with it. Not to mention they're using plated metals or coated metals from China, which I'm not a fan of either. That's almost what everybody is doing, because it's an inferior technology and it's cheap. And that's why they do it. The Japanese wanted to do it the best. And that holy hydrogen machine, the one that I'm inhaling from right now, is the only hydrogen machine in the world. And I don't know if you find this suspicious, that doesn't use plated metals, doesn't use coated metals, doesn't use cheap metals like stainless steel. It's doing things that nobody else in the industry does. On top, because this guy was so passionate about doing this for his daughter, Hida, that I even found out later that he was told, like, hey, we could do this in China and save a ton of money. And then you can sell these machines and make a ton of profit. And he was like, no, I'm doing all this in-house. I'm doing everything in Japan. I am not letting this out of my sight. I'm not doing it for a business. I'm doing this thinking about my daughter here. And that's what I love. I believe so strongly that when we do something from love and we do something from integrity, you're shooting for the highest possible outcome. And he wasn't going to let anything corrupt it, because he had love for his daughter. Corruption only comes in when you don't have that high level of love. That's when you start thinking about the dollar signs, right? That's
Yeah.
when the corruption comes in. And so that's why I highly commend this gentleman. I've never met him in person. Sorry, I think somebody was just. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, you're back now.
Yeah, sorry, somebody was trying to cut in there. Somebody was trying to call. Apologize for that. So anyway,
It's
that's
okay.
kind of the journey.
Okay, so let's rewind back and tap back on the molecular hydrogen. You mentioned you don't even need to dive into the research because it's just clear as day for you. Maybe for us, the general public, it isn't as clear as it is known as a natural antioxidant. What makes it different? Molecular hydrogen, and what is it actually doing when you do consume it, either through drinking it or breathing it in, like you're doing now?
Yes. So hydrogen, there's some stuff that we know, and honestly, there's a lot that we don't know. And the biggest thing is they can do a study, for example, on arthritis. They can see the inflammatory mark. They can see that it's working or appears to be working, but they don't know exactly why, right? But what we have found that is one, that it appears to be a selective antioxidant. Now, hydrogen is not a normal antioxidant. I don't think people actually really understand antioxidants, to be quite honest with you, because it's kind of just a blanket term. You know,
Hmm.
I'll give you some examples. Like, are you aware that antioxidants actually come in different sizes? Are you aware of that?
I had no idea.
Right. So I'll give you some examples. If you were to look up the size of vitamin E versus the size of vitamin C versus the size of CoQ10 versus the size of glutathione versus the size of hydrogen, they're all different sizes. Now, why does this matter? Because if you have something like CoQ10 trying to penetrate the core of the mitochondria, it's like trying to put an elephant through the front door of your house. It's never going to happen. It doesn't fit. Hydrogen, on the other hand, is so tiny that it's like a little ant walking right through your front door. No problem, right? And it being tiny is extremely important on how it functions because guess what? Hydrogen, molecular hydrogen, can enter every nick and cranny that your body has. There is no place they cannot reach. This stuff can literally go right through metal, go right through walls. It's unbelievable. I mean, truly unbelievable. And then it's a selective antioxidant, which is even crazier. So it doesn't just antioxidize indiscriminately, like, let's say, vitamin C. And people may think that's a good thing. It's not. You don't want to antioxidize everything. There, everything in life and health is about balance. And I personally think that hydrogen is the great balancer. That's why I can breathe this stuff all day long if I wanted to. And the body will reach a natural homeostasis where I will literally exhale or off gas any hydrogen that's not needed. You know, and so this is really important to understand, not to mention the fact that our bodies actually make hydrogen, by the way. And I believe very strongly, we know that the majority of the hydrogen being made is in our gut. And there is an absolute attack on our gut. That's why there's so many people with gut issues. People don't know that almost 80% of our immune system comes from our gut. Okay.
Right.
When there's a beautiful little baby, he has an umbilical cord to his gut. Okay. When a woman has a baby and she goes to breastfeed, it's not milk that's coming out. And I mean, again, working in the medical field, I know all about, I worked with lactation consultants. What comes out is colostrum. Okay. And people don't understand the effects that that has on the gut microbiome. This is why I'm so kind of against, I'm really big on organic foods too, because the pesticides and herbicides and insecticides and all these different things that kill certain pathogens or bacterias or whatnot that could potentially be beneficial, but it's like kind of like taking antibiotics. You really don't want to do that on the regular. If you need to do it to save your life, of course, but you don't want to be doing that regularly, and that's kind of what you're consuming on the regular. It's one of the reasons that I'm not just a hydrogen expert, I'm also a water expert. I know every water filtration modality in existence. I know what's in our water. I literally have a third-party lab test right here. And if you think that your average home water filter is removing everything, you're wrong. I've seen the lab reports. I know how to remove everything out of our water. And the biggest issue when I was doing all my research about water is who does it affect the most, these contaminants in the water? Babies and children.
Yeah.
This is a major problem, okay? their brains aren't fully developed, their livers aren't fully developed, their kidneys aren't fully developed, their bodies are not fully developed. And when you start taking in these contaminants that are found in our water, just look at the rate of sick children these days. It's astronomical. And nobody seems to be thinking about the water, not to mention radioactive contaminants found in our water. The average person doesn't know that that's in our water either. Not to mention parasites, viruses, bacteria, molds, the craziest stuff. So it's very important. I show people how to clean their water too. I mean, I can give a website of the products I use. I only recommend that which I use because I only use the best for my health. So that's how I go about it.
Okay, so let's talk specific to comorbidities that most of our patient population or our audience is dealing with. So, right, with pandas, PANS, autism, we're talking about neuroinflammation, oxidative stress, and mitochondrial dysfunction are kind of like the three core dysfunctions that most of these families are dealing with. And one thing I listened to you on an interview, you said one phrase that I love. It said deficiencies lead to disease. And I think in all those categories, oxidative stress is our body is needing more oxygen. We're in neuroinflammation, and then mitochondrial dysfunction. Maybe you can just speak to that.
You know, those three things are actually have a lot to do with what hydrogen can potentially do for us, you know, in my opinion, because we have seen that hydrogen appears to function as an anti-inflammatory. We also do see, I actually have some data and some footage from Japan showing what hydrogen is doing in the medical field. And we do see how good it is at dealing with ROS, which is reactive oxygen species. You know, a lot of oxidative stress, what I don't think people understand is that oxidative stress is related to oxygen, okay? A lot of people misunderstand oxygen. And some people just lose their minds when I say this, but it's literally a scientific fact. Anybody can go Google it. Oxygen is actually toxic to us. It's one of the reasons that if you go deep sea diving, they literally have to remove almost all the oxygen out of the tanks. I don't know if you're aware of that. And they replace it with hydrogen. And they replace it with some helium. And helium is just kind of another form of hydrogen, really. And this is a really big deal because this gas, see, the human body is funny. We can breathe different types of gases. And it affects our body in different ways. And I'm a fan of oxygen. We need a certain amount of oxygen, but we need to find ways to liberate our body of a lot of this oxidative stress, these free radical damage. And that's where hydrogen really comes in. And I think it's really, really crucial for people with autism, actually. I think the biggest thing is how to implement it with people with autism because it's hard for them to just sit down and inhale hydrogen. And that's one of the more challenging things. And of course, what I'm a big fan of is doing the combination. Another reason that the Holy Hydrogen machine is just so beautifully perfect, making both hydrogen water and not just any hydrogen water. Nanobubbles plays a really important point in making proper hydrogen water. And then the other process is the gas inhalation. And ultimately the combination is what we've seen work. You know, you're probably unaware of this, but I've recently been contacted by, a lot of people have been following my protocols and there's been a lot of pushback, but all the pushback is coming from people who sell products like these. Anybody who's selling products is pretty much the pushback because they sell the stuff from China that I'm not a fan of. And I'm just trying to give the data. But there's a guy following my protocol and there's a world famous scientist actually who he does specialized blood work for basically very wealthy people. He works with a lot of billionaires, even millionaires. And we're going to present the data because we already saw it. So I'm giving you a little behind the scenes peek. What he saw, he basically said, this should be impossible. Like this can't be happening. It's too amazing. And he went to the guy who was following my protocol and he's like, how did you do this? You're testing better than basically just anybody in the world except for, there's one guy who tests just a tiny bit better than him. And he's a guy who's spending about $2 million a year on his health, just so you know.
Isn't that Brian Johnson?
Yeah. I wasn't going to give his name, but yeah, that's him. But this guy who's following my protocol is doing it for a fraction of the price. It's so much cheaper. And he's basically right there with Brian Johnson. And he's not even killing himself trying to get that healthy. This guy actually still does things that he probably shouldn't do, that are not perfect. And it's still phenomenal. The scientist thought that it was too good to be true. he thought maybe it was a fluke as far as the testing. So they just redid everything and more. And 3 days ago, we just got the results for that. And they're even better now because the guy contacted me and I fine tuned his protocol. I was like, look, you might want to do it this way instead of this way. And the results just got better. And now this guy's like, okay, I want to stay in contact with you. So now we're working together and to basically show people this magical thing that the world really doesn't know about. And so, that's why I appreciate you having me on, because the world's not going to find out about it unless we talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I think the element, the understanding of elements is being revisited now because I think our education is incomplete is probably the nicest and most politically correct statement that I can state when it comes to that. We're learning new things all the time, especially when it comes to our physiological happenings within our bodies. And I think that elements, relearning the elements and the impact that they have on our biology is a really fun project. And that's why I find this conversation entertaining and intriguing to me because, I mean, if we're just talking about hydrogen and how it binds with other elements, we're relearning biology on the elemental level, and so to me that's really fun and interesting. And so just as a reminder, tell everyone, so Holy Hydrogen is the name of the brand that we're kind of talking about now, but and you can find that on social media, but what was your YouTube channel again?
Oh, it's Uprising 144K.
Okay.
And just to make it clear to the audience too, and maybe even to you, Sean, I think this is important. Look, do I love this hydrogen machine? Absolutely. I mean, it saved my life, right? So that's great. Do I love the story behind it? I think it's remarkable. I feel terrible for the guy, having his very first child born like this, and it's a very sad story. But I'm grateful for what came out of it. But I hope you understand, I'm not just about hydrogen. I'm also about really clean water. And that's a whole other company, so people, if they want to look at what I recommend, it's a website called mypurewater.com. And of course, if people like discount codes, it's the same name as my channel, Uprising 144K. So I'm really clean on water. I'm big on water. And then the next thing that I'm really big on, which you brought up, was overcoming every nutritional deficiency, mineral deficiency. The reason that I like to try to overcome deficiencies is because we know for a fact deficiencies lead to disease. I mean, we know this. I mean, this is what's shocking. If you're deficient in vitamin C, you get scurvy, right? How do you fix scurvy? Do you take some pharmaceutical drug? No, you just get your vitamin C levels right. That's all you have to do. Now, what's shocking to me, this is such a simple thing, and for the life of me, I don't know why doctors don't get it. If somebody goes into the doctor's office, how many times have you heard? And I know because, again, I worked in the field. I saw it a million times. They have some condition, and what does the doctor say? Well, we don't know why, blah, blah, blah. We don't know. It's always we don't know. We don't know anything, basically. I mean, they don't know a lot. Let me give you this pill. Just try this. Oh, that didn't work? Come back again. Try this one. Oh, that didn't work? Let me just give you a pain for the pill, or a pill for the pain. Let me just give you a pill. They're all nothing but Band-Aids. Nothing's fixing the issue, right?
Yeah.
And people don't even realize, by the way, and they can do the research. Have you seen how many pharmaceutical drugs actually lead to greater deficiencies? The average person has never done that research, and you'd be shocked about this. When do you ever hear a doctor say, you know what? Why don't we do a panel here, some blood work, to see if you have any nutritional deficiencies and see if that has anything to do with the symptoms you're having? How often do you hear that? You almost never hear that. And it's such a no-brainer. It's so stupid, actually. I'm sorry to say that, but it's a frustration for me because I work with tons of people, and the results that we're seeing are just phenomenal. Every single time the doctors are saying things like, this is a miracle, let's put it on the list of miracles. It's like, it's not a miracle. You're just not understanding how the human body works. I hate to say that. You have a certain level of understanding, but most doctors are really more, dare I say, drug dealers or whatever. That's where the majority of their training is, in drugs. And I'm not against pharmaceutical drugs. There are certain drugs that are really great. But a lot of times I believe that we don't need the majority of the drugs that, they're dishing out to people.
Yeah.
And so
It's an interesting flip of the script where comparing sick care versus wellness and living and thriving, there it seems to be in two different realms and realities. And I love what you're saying as far as the deficiencies. As long as you fix the deficiencies, you can find your wellness. And we work with Function Health for labs to look over 100 biomarkers. We have a partnership with them that if you're looking to get something like that done, I think it's probably one of the most cost effective ones out there versus if you go to just a specialty clinic, they're going to charge you per draw. And I think Function Health has the best price point, but also the best summary of biomarkers to address that specifically. So I agree with you there, Greg, in a lot of ways. And I think that's the root cause analysis that everyone's going through currently in the reframing and restructuring of our healthcare system to functional medicine, integrative medicine versus what was the conventional Western approach previously that's kind of crumbling before our very eyes. But yeah, it sounds like you have something to say too.
Yeah, I wanted to share with you because I think it's a big deal and I think it's important. First of all, in my personal opinion, I think hydrogen helps a great deal with the nutritional deficiencies. And you may be, how in the world does hydrogen help? Well, for one, we know the science and the data from Japan showing that as you age, you're making less and less hydrogen. Or if you have gut issues, you're most likely making less hydrogen. So what you're really doing is basically supplementing the hydrogen so that you get the right amounts. But the interesting thing about this whole process is I was getting blood work regularly, looking for nutritional deficiencies so that I could fine tune my protocols that I've created, which in the future, very near future, I'm going to be releasing a way for people to have access to it. Because otherwise people need to get in contact with me directly. I'm busy all the time. I'm doing all these individual consults and it's just overwhelming. So somebody offered to help me put it like in this little AI, very inexpensive, way where people can access all my work. And I've spent a mass amount of time and money figuring all this out. It's taken me a long time. And when I was doing all this blood work, though, what was really phenomenal about it and taught me something about hydrogen that the world, in my opinion, doesn't know yet, including potentially even the Japanese, is that when the doctor, and it was this doctor, she has experience of over 30 years doing blood work. She scared me when she called me because anybody who's ever worked in Western medicine knows that they don't call you unless there's a problem. So when there's a problem, that's when they call you because otherwise they got to call every patient. There's no time for that. She called me about my results after doing this many, many blood draws for many years. And she called me one day and I kind of panicked. I was like, oh my God, what'd you find? I know that you only call if there's a problem. And she said, calm down. There's no problem. She said, I'm actually calling you because I've been doing this for over 30 years. And she said, not one time in all my years have I seen blood that looks like yours. And I was like, whoa, okay, what exactly are you seeing? She said, it's phenomenal. She said, I don't know what you're doing. And a lot of doctors actually who come to me for help, they always open up on behind the scenes. And she just straight up opened up saying, I have all these patients and I can't help them. I'm just throwing drugs at them and I know I'm not helping them. She says, my own daughter is sick. So see, this is where it hits home when it's your child, when it's your partner, or when it's yourself, because she admitted to that she was sick also. And so she's like, I want to know what you're doing. And she thought it was just some magic pill in the end because I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to explain it to you, but she wouldn't let me go. She's like, I'm not going to let you go until you explain it to me. And I was like, well, I clean my water to the highest degree. I make the best hydrogen. I eat such and such foods. Like I was going into all the details and she just stopped me and she said, this is crazy. I thought it was some pill. I don't know what this hydrogen stuff is. And I don't know if my patients are going to go and clean their water. And I'm like, look, if you're not going to make the changes, then that's up to you. I'm just telling you, you asked. And that's how I did it. So she was really shocked because in my blood work also, it was pretty funny. One, I showed no nutritional deficiencies. She said that's almost impossible. She said there's nobody who walks around that has no nutritional or mineral deficiencies. Virtually nobody. Everybody's deficient in something. So she was blown away by that. And then she got more blown away. And this is controversial. I'm not going to go into detail just because of the controversy. She was really shocked when she started asking me what I eat. And then when I told her, because I have a specific way of food and balance and the whole bit. And I remember she was like, that's impossible. She goes, no way you're eating like that. She goes, let me guess, you've been doing this for like 6 months. I said, I've been doing it for over a decade. She said, it makes no logical sense that your nutrients would be like this when you're eating, the way that you're eating. What people don't realize, guess what, is that your body can actually make a lot of its known nutrients. And you need a proper GI system in order to do that. And so instead of me focusing on specific nutrients, I focus on the very things that it requires to make the nutrients, as crazy as this sounds. It's kind of like, remember for a while there was this big fad about, here, take glutathione. It's like, look, your body makes glutathione. And then they finally smartened up and said, well, actually, let's give you the ingredients for your body to make the glutathione on its own, which is a better glutathione than the supplement. And just to make clear to people, I've been able to achieve the most craziest things, right, in my health. And you guys can see the testimonials on my channel with virtually no supplements. And that's a very big deal because I'm actually not a huge fan of supplements, or at least most of them. There's a lot of supplements that are highly contaminated. You can easily Google it. I personally know people who had liver damage from supplements, kidney damage from supplements, even the wrong types of hydrogen. I've seen it. So that's why people need guidance. And that's why it took me so long to figure all this out, because I'm very cautious about the things now that I put in my body. And now that when I do the blood work and when I do even certain gas tests, I was invited they did these gas tests where they actually measure the gases that are coming out of your mouth. And this says a lot about your health. I don't know how much you're aware of this. And
I have a device right here. I don't know if you've ever seen a food marble. It's another partner that we work with that it does test the different type of gases that you're exhaling.
yeah, so you're going to really love this one because I went to this guy who runs a center and they had all different types of equipment to measure, to do different gas tests. And just to do it briefly, the results have to be between a 1 and a 5, 5 being the worst, 1 being the best. And when I asked them, what's the best anybody's ever tested at? And he goes, well, almost everybody tested a 5. And he says, once in a while, somebody who really takes care of their health might test at a 4. And then I said, well, what's the best anybody's ever tested at? And he said, well, that would be me. He said, I tested at a 3. This guy, and you should see this guy, he's like really into health. He's super muscular, all this stuff. And he invited me because he's like, I want to test the hydrogen man. So he offered to test me for free. So I was like, all right, I'll go do it. And when I tested at a 1. And you should have seen his face. He's like, this is not possible. Every single time they test me, they say, this is impossible. You're doing the impossible. And he didn't believe it so much that he took almost half an hour. He said, no, this is not right. He said, I'm going to recalibrate all my equipment. I'm going to redo it all and do all this testing all over again because there's no way you're at 1. And he did it again, and I tested it at a 1 again. And then he did it one more time, 1 again. And then he said, you're tricking me. He said, let me guess, you're fasting. And I said, no, I'm not fasting. He said, when was the last time you ate? I said, maybe an hour or 2 ago. He goes, this is not possible. This should be impossible, but yet, he goes, you're doing it. And then he had all these other tests, some of which I put on my channel. I was just testing off the charts on everything. His equipment couldn't test where I was going, and there was nobody who had tested that far. All his equipment, it's kind of funny. It literally says what changes you can make to improve because everybody always needs improvement, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I don't. I'm just saying that when he tested me, the machine literally was like, there's no more room for improvement. Like this is as far as you can get. But I just think that we need equipment that can get even more sensitive. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But it's been a really wild ride because I never expected to be like a health guy or a health guru. It wasn't even really, it wasn't even what was of interest to me. But all I can say is that God works in mysterious ways and he puts us on a path. And so I accepted the path I'm on. And it brings me no greater joy than to help people who are either suffering or have family members that are suffering. Because I know from personal experience and my compassion as far as how that can ruin somebody's life or make their life very difficult. And guess what? Life's hard enough. Life's hard enough than to deal with all these other issues. So I just hope that this helps somebody out there.
Well, your wealth of information, you've obviously proven that you've done your research, and I appreciate you coming on to have this conversation and possibility to have you back. But I think my summary of the conversation today is hydrogen is the smallest antioxidant out there. So because of that, it can get into every nook and cranny within the body. So especially with our kids that might have heavy metal toxicity, help detox the body there.
I don't want to interrupt you on that, but this is so important because hydrogen, one, can go right into the core of the mitochondria. And you know about how the mitochondria are being affected. They're figuring out about mitochondrial dysfunction. Yeah. And the very, very first research on hydrogen, by the way, was actually by a mitochondrial specialist. And he saw the amazing results of it. So this is already a big one. Not to mention, again, the reason you want really high purity of hydrogen is for the very reason you just touched on. Heavy metal toxicity, all sorts of byproduct from cheap hydrogen. So that's why you want it really pure because guess what? When hydrogen goes in you, it goes everywhere, including past the blood-brain barrier, right to your brain. I'm inhaling hydrogen straight to my brain right now. and into my lungs, into my bloodstream, into my eyes. This is a really big deal. And so I just wanted to touch on that, when you mentioned it, that it is the most permeable. The size of it makes it permeable and can get anywhere in the body. There's nowhere it cannot reach.
Well, I love that, and especially with all the environmental toxins that we are facing in our world today. Just
Now
it's
you now you brought up another point. I'm sorry to interrupt you on this one because this is a really big deal too. And people can see it on my video number 8. My videos are numbered. Hydrogen to me, when I was looking at the data, I'm not kidding you, looks like a guardian angel. And the reason I say that is how protective it appears to be. It literally protects your body from the environmental toxins. And if I give you one wild example, on video number 8, I show cells being exposed to like radiation or chemotherapy, and it caused 90% cellular damage. Imagine a car if it's 90% rusted. It's a hunk of junk, right? You can't even drive it around. It won't function. Then they did the same exact test, but they had the person use hydrogen. And instead of getting 90% cellular damage, they got 10%. It protected them so much. If you had a car with 10% rust, you can still drive that around. It'll still function. And that's how protective it is. And that's just one of many examples about how protective hydrogen is. That's why I use it so much, because we're in an environment these days where there's toxicity everywhere. It's in the air, it's in the water, it's in our food, it's in our houses, it's in our clothes, it's everywhere. It's in our medicine. I mean, it's out of control. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I had to talk about how beautifully protective hydrogen is.
Well, I think that's a perfect note to close the conversation on. We'll definitely link in the podcast on our YouTube and on all podcast platforms your YouTube channel, and let's just continue the conversation, because obviously there's probably going to be a lot of people that will reach out to you for additional questions, clarification points, and we are offering $100 off the system as part of our partnership with Holy Hydrogen. So we're excited for this partnership moving forward. But Greg, thanks so much for being a guest on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on again, Sean.